What brings you here? I didn't see your name on the list of Rune Hunters Captain Kristen gathered. You are looking for someone, and you don't seem to be willing to tell me whom. Well, that might be wise. It's better not to trust anyone until you're certain. If you need a place to stay, you can use this place. This is a temporary camp, and we will be leaving soon.
How can you order Rune Hunters to gather at Nivis Mountains when Calicorda is being overwhelmed by the life slaves? Is there something more important than Calicorda to the captain? I really don't know what's going on. Do you have any clues? I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's confused. Even if I am, don't tell me that I'm the only one.
I didn't know our encounter from Calicorda would lead to another meeting like this. We are waiting for directions as per Captain Kristen's orders. Not all of the Rune Hunters arrived, so we are actually behind schedule. Can I ask you to go out and see if there are any Rune Hunters struggling to get here? The terrain is really complex around here, so it's easy to get lost. It will be particularly difficult for Lewin.
I'm freezing to death. I'm literally becoming frosty. I've been wandering around here for half a day. I was told to come here, so I did. But is there really something out here? What? Leon and Opika are here? Whoa, does that mean I actually came to the right place? Oh man, I never thought I'd find the way here all on my own. Thank you for the escort, Rune Hunter. I'll see you at camp.
I haven't seen your face before. Are you a new Rune Hunter? I'm Walden, a short-term hired hunter by Leon. I'm working with her on the condition that she and her party will solve the food problem while staying at the camp. Anyway, since you're here, it would be nice if you could lend me a hand, especially seeing how I'm working alone. From the nearby trap, take out the animal that will be used as today's rations. And of course, it's your responsibility to clean and trim it, all right?
I knew it. I'm certain the other Rune Hunters are having trouble finding their way here. If Lewin is here, that means Werder is coming. I wonder where Werder is.
I'm worried about Werder. We were together until the temple, but I lost my way in the middle, and I'm certain that Werder is still looking for me there. We've always been like that. Rune Hunter, can I ask you to find Werder for me? I can't let my friend freeze to death in a place like this.
is already at the top. No wonder he didn't show up. Lewin was never good with directions. I guess he got lucky this time. That means I shouldn't linger here any longer. I should hurry to the camp and get some warmth. By the way, there was a giant snow pig Cornu down there. It even penetrated through the temple. It must be really strong. If you're the type of Rune Hunter that enjoys adventures, why don't you try taking it on?
You're the Rune Hunter. The militia is headed to the stormy snowfields. Help them. They'll be annihilated.
Annihilated. I'm not sure what's going on, but that's definitely not good news. But after learning how the militia killed the Simises, I'm not really liking the idea of helping them either. But even so, you'll probably go to the stormy snowfields. How can I stop you?
Rune Hunter, I heard you are planning to go to the stormy snowfields. Now, we're missing one more person. It's Winsel. If you happen to find him, can you direct him to where we are?
Damn it, who cares about artifacts or ancient texts? Right now, it's more important to protect your life. I lost all the things I had gathered from the temple while running away from those life slave monsters. Originally, I was supposed to hand them over to the archaeologist inside the temple. Forget it. I'm ditching this job. If that archaeologist had half a brain, they would have ran away too. Nobody in their right mind would stay here.
must have overdone it. I tried to study life slaves. I've dedicated my whole life to studying serpents, so I couldn't ignore this opportunity. I tried my best to find something by looking through the things at the temple. If I knew this would happen, I would have returned sooner. I was trapped here, helpless. These treasures are beautiful. I'm glad I stayed behind. Thank you, Rune Hunter. I've decided if I die, I will die here. I cannot take one step outside and leave these things behind. They're too precious.
I know you really well. The other Rune Hunters are already there. I guess I wasted too much time here. I must have lost track of time as I read the story about the primal war on this tombstone. The war between the 12 beings of Trom and the evil god serpents. The story even talks about the birth and death of the 12 beings. The 12 beings, born from the void, shared their powers to create Trom and lived among their children. Everything was in harmony, and their children prospered under the blessing of the 12 gods. But there was a 13th being. The evil god serpents rose from the darkness of the light that came from the 12 gods. The 12 beings couldn't stand idle in the face of serpents, who shattered the balance and corrupted their children. The 12 beings tried to defeat the evil by sharing their powers contained within runes and essences, but they failed. In the end, the 12 beings decided to merge into one and return back to their beginning, their source, together with serpents. After a fierce battle, the soul of serpents was split into two and scattered into the world, and the 12 beings lost their bodies and names and fell into a deep slumber. Since serpents was born from the 12 gods, without the first beginning, serpents would not exist either. However, as time passed and as the children of Trom began to use the power of runes once again, they began to access the zodiacs, which in turn awakened the gods. But what they had not been aware of was that once divinity was restored, evil came along with it. Serpent's power brings back life. The Redonimo pagans believe that the return of serpents will promise an eternity of revivals. Ever since the life slaves began rising, the Redonimo are killing everything in their path. As long as the power of serpents remains, the dead will continue to revive under Serpent's command. They seem to be trying to reach Trom with the life slaves from Bilitis. Or perhaps they have already thought of a way to massacre the people of Trom all at once.
Is it my fault for coming to Bilitis during this uproar? I lost everything I had to the Now I'm broke, and there's nothing left for me. And at this rate, I'll probably lose my life, too. Rune Hunter, if you can help, maybe it will be possible. Get revenge on the Glacier Reaver, who took everything from me in my stead. I don't care if it comes back to life. I just want to see it fall down once. You can take my possessions. I can't do this anymore.
That's enough child's play. Anything that loses its value should be thrown away. From now on, we shall only stride forward for the One's complete revival. Come and bleed for the One. That is your sole purpose for existing.
I can't believe William was... Does that mean most of the militia was being manipulated? And what Callie said sounds awfully similar to what the pagans said. Don't blame yourself. It's not your fault.
So you guys, are you saying that you have been working with the militia all along?
Kind of. Although I did sense something odd at Siniswamp.
If you've been with them since Calicorda, I can actually understand why Fred made such a scene out there.
Who is the leader of the militia?
It was Prince Favina. He had black hair and a strikingly pale face.
What?
Did I say something wrong?
Prince Favina? Are you sure about that?
What? What do you mean?
Despite being an adopted son, Prince Favina was famous for how much he looked like King Alden. There were even rumors saying Prince Favina was King Alden's illegitimate son. But King Alden had brown hair. Even though Prince Favina went missing, there are things that simply do not change. I understand what you're saying. You want to save the soldiers that might still be at the camp, right? Let us join you. If the militia command is connected to the pagans, that becomes our problem as well. Captain Kristen has been preparing to stop the Radonimo from going through with their plans to revive serpents. That is why we are gathered here. The red moon rose, just like 10 years ago when serpents came back to life.
It wasn't something that was widely known to begin with. Actually, from the outside, the captain didn't really seem to care about the pagans. I think the captain tried to sort out the Rune Hunters through the conflict between Calicorda and the Terras. We were chosen, called to come to this point. If there weren't any issues, you, the hero of Calicorda, would have been with us too. You said the militia camp is at the entrance of Nivis Mountains, right? Let's go save them.
beyond what I imagined. Every step I take feels like a plunge into freezing water. This is another level of cold. If the snowstorm was an ambush, this is like poison that slowly creeps into you. You said you've been here before, right? If I were you, I would never want to venture here again. Let's move before our feet freeze. I just want to get out of here as soon as possible.
I went the wrong way and ended up at this cave. The more I look at it, the more impressive it is. The crystals that make up this cave never rise above a specific temperature. I tried stoking a fire for hours and tried pouring hot water on it, but it never got warm. Isn't it amazing? Where could I use this crystal? It would be a good idea to collect a few samples first. Can you deliver the crystal samples along with my thoughts to my brother? I'll give you a hefty reward.
Wow, this path is really rough. I can't even tell which way I'm going right now. I'm glad I came with you guys. If I came here alone, I'm certain I would have froze to death, alone inside this cave. Then, I would be discovered by some biologist a few hundred years later and be experimented on. It sounds worse the more I think about it. But this cave seems to keep going and going. I'm trusting you to find the way.
This is interesting. I was actually thinking the same thing. I thought that if I put this crystal inside the chest, it would become as cold as this crystal. It will require more research, but wouldn't storing food in it make it last longer? When I get back to Traum safely, I'll have to test it out using these samples. Thank you, Rune Hunter.
Rune Hunter, there is a monster that turned into a life slave. Please be careful. We will be hopeless if you get hurt.
I see the end of the cave. How far are we from the militia camp? Passing through a Galachi camp? Why do I feel like this journey is getting more and more difficult? But the sensation of leaving footprints on fresh new snow isn't that bad. This is something only a Rune Hunter can enjoy. Don't you agree? Whatever pops out, wherever we go, let's continue to march forward.
I can't believe you embarked on a journey like this alone. I'm certain the hardship was enormous. I'm always getting help from you, which is what makes me look back at the stuff I've done for you. My memory isn't bad. I think that's because I'm holding our time together very dearly. I wanted to tell you, thank you for journeying with me, and that I'm continuing to count on you.
how you engage in battle tells me why you were regarded as the hero of Calicorda. I know it's because of the circumstances, but don't you think you were the ideal rune hunter that Captain Kristen was waiting for? Of course. That doesn't mean we can lower our guard, okay?
That militia captain, he isn't someone you should underestimate. Unless you are well informed about the internal affairs of the Tria royal family, it would be really difficult to pull something off like that. Who do you think he actually is?
militia camp is just beyond here, right? I think it was relatively easy to get here because all of us moved together. This should be the last obstacle. Let's keep sharp.
Salvis, are you all right?
I'm fine. But why are you here?
We obtained some information related to the Redonimo, so we were on our way to the militia camp.
Our compatriots have accompanied us this far as our guides. We weren't familiar with Nivis Mountains, so their help is greatly appreciated.
It is dangerous here. How about we return to camp and talk there? I'm quite sure we will have a lot of stories to share.
I didn't know you were looking for Salvis. That's quite a story you have. Salvis and Captain Kristen are close friends. They joined forces since the Bilitis expedition 10 years ago. Go ahead and talk to Salvis. I'm sure you have things to settle.
I heard from the other Rune Hunters that you thought Prince Favina was leading the militia. For a long time, Kristen and I thought you were part of the pagans. On the other hand, you thought we were working with the pagans. No matter the case, there certainly was a huge misunderstanding. I came to Nivis Mountains in search of the sacred arms that the Redonimo followers used to create the plague cloud. Their plan was to massacre the people of Trom and turn them into life slaves to spread evil throughout the world. I sensed the strong presence of a sacred arms in the direction of the militia camp. We should hurry.
That place is already empty. Huh. It appears to have been occupied by creatures for some time. The training ground is the only place I sense someone. But I can't tell if it's the militia, pagan, or life slaves. They are all dangerous, though. Be careful.
Rune Hunter. It's dangerous here. He escaped. It's too late for me.
Rune Hunter, please save Drillmaster Eric's at the training grounds. Monster-like things. I trusted them. Everything was a lie.
It's been a while. I'm surprised that you are still alive. Eric's, look. The Rune Hunter you were so worried about is here.
No. Run.
Come at me, you little brat.
So, the sacred arms of Vesper.
Yes, this contains the power of one of the 12 primal beings, the god of poison and plague, Vesper. Depending on how you use it, this sacred arms can kill or save lives.
Professor! Simus Pikul is...
Something must have happened at Simus Pikul.
I'm glad you're alive. Promise me that you'll survive.
happened?
Professor, the human child woke up and...
Kristen made contact. He is waiting for us at Avina with the other Rune Hunters. I promise I will explain everything soon. But just trust me, and head to Avina for now. Your friends will also be waiting for you there. I'll head there as soon as I'm done with my preparations.
The Rune Hunters of Nivis Mountain activated the sacred arms of Vesper together, as Salvus instructed. The plague cloud which was heading towards Tromp stopped, and the plague energy in the sky was once again sealed into the sacred arms. Weeper's attack burned down Simis Bikul, along with many Simises, including Liet. Facing the death of countless Simises with whom he spent many years together, Salvus moaned in anguish for a long time. Together with Salvus, you helped Simis Bikul recover and headed to Advina. On your way to Advina, your mind was filled with chaos and confusion.